Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 366, How Disobedience Plagues the Mind, Part 3, The Impact of Non-Compliance. The podcast objectives are analyze how despair opens the door to non-compliance, reveal what a healthy thought dimension looks like, and analyze the impact of non-compliance. This lesson contains timelines and other visuals. Therefore, if you are listening to the podcast, I advise you to watch the video version on our website or YouTube, or request a PDF of the lesson so you can add the visual effect. The door was opened by despair. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 127 of our exposition of lawlessness. In the most recent podcast, we initiated a detailed analysis of 1 Samuel 15, 1 through 26, to wit, the beginning of the end for Saul, the first king of Israel. Along these lines, we came to see how the spirit of noncompliance works to keep us from fulfilling the vision of Elohim by causing us to create plans that do not reflect his vision. Quite the contrary, these plans will reflect our tainted perspective and our worst fears, being driven by despair. You can see this development by observing the diagram below. To wit, this diagram reflects a thought dimension that has been conquered by doubt. Now, the most telling aspect of this diagram is sure. To wit, your planning zone has already been compromised by non-compliance. If you're wondering how, I'll tell you, using my preferred example of an enemy nation and its invading army. If you recall, disobedience is symbolic of an enemy nation, while doubt, i.e., the primary application of disobedience, is its invading army. Along these lines, doubt is partitioned by three separate invading armies. Enter despair, distrust, and self-reliance. Our war with doubt, then, is transacted by three primary invasions. To wit, the 3 degrees of doubt are designed to penetrate our thought dimension and to establish strongholds within our mind. And they work to accomplish this counter operation in sequence. Vis-a-vis, the first invasion is transacted by despair, i.e., the fundamental degree of doubt. Now, if despair is successful in its invasion, the next invasion will be transacted by distrust, i.e., the focal degree of doubt. And if distrust is successful in its invasion, the final invasion will be transacted by self-reliance, i.e., the critical degree of doubt. At this juncture, you will have lost your war with the invading army of doubt, opening the door for the enemy nation to occupy your territory, i.e., your mind. Along these lines, the first enemy occupant is noncompliance, i.e., the primary driver of despair, i.e., the first of the three invading armies of doubt. And as you can see by the diagram below, noncompliance occupies your planning zone, which is centered in your left brain. And the reason why is simple. The door to your planning zone was opened by despair, which is situated in the adjacent zone of thought generation. The impact of non-compliance. Now, it goes without saying that the corruption of your planning zone is indeed a terrific loss. And we can see this by observing the diagram to the right. This diagram is an illustration of a healthy thought dimension that is being governed by faith. This is what your mind looks like once you have gained the victory over doubt. As you can clearly see, your planning zone in this model receives input from your mental bridge of trust and your rock of reliance. The same goes for your execution zone. Here again, this is how your mental workflow is designed to function. To wit, an informed thought is passed on to your planning zone and your execution zone for processing. Here lies the inflection. To wit, these are two separate zones. They are independent of each other. Ergo, we need a faculty within the mental workflow to bridge the gap. Enter the mental bridge of trust. Per the diagram to the right, trust provides a connection between your planning and execution zones to ensure they are aligned. Not only this, but the critical degree of reliance ensures that the outputs of these zones do not contradict any of the precepts of faith. Again, this is how a healthy thought dimension works. Now, take a look at the diagram below. Look very hard and consider what is missing. And feel free to pause the video if you need to. Clearly, the mental bridge of trust is missing. Ergo, there is no connection between your planning zone and your execution zone. Both zones receive the same input, but there is no way to validate their output. Alas, the mental workflow is broken. Here again, this is where noncompliance comes onto the scene, having the door open wide by despair. Vis-a-vis, whereas the execution zone is designed to establish the guidelines for your planning zone, despair alters the workflow, giving precedence to planning over execution. Now, the reason why is sure. Your thought generation processes have been hijacked by despair and distrust, as you can see by the diagram below. Ergo, they are in control of your mental workflow at this intersection of your thought dimension, and thus they can determine the sequence of the output of your thought generation processes. Not only this, but by giving precedence to planning over execution, despair opens the door for the spirit of noncompliance to create a new vision aligned with its new plans. And by creating a new vision, noncompliance sets the stage for you to walk in disobedience, even if a large part of you desires to do the will of Elohim. Romans 7:15-21 is revealing. For what I work, I know not. For what I wish, that I do not practice. But what I hate, that I do. And now it is no longer I that work it, but the sin dwelling in me. For to wish is present with me, but to work the good I do not find. For the good that I wish to do, I do not do, but the evil I do not wish to do, this I practice. I find therefore this law, that when I wish to do the good, that the evil is present with me. Now, I trust you can see the grave danger of this situation and how the damage of doubt in the mind doesn't end with doubt. It doesn't even end with disobedience. And yet, you can clearly see how perilous doubt is as it pertains to the evolution of disobedience. Listen to me. Once despair and distrust have taken over your thought dimension, there really isn't much you can do. In the best case, you have a handful of strongholds you will have to eliminate. In the worst case, your quest for holiness, perfection, and everlasting life will be all but over. This is the impact of noncompliance. And yet, the damage of disobedience is not finished. The damage of disobedience is not done. Now, here is the final word. We looked for good and did not find, for noncompliance had corrupted our minds. My dear friends, I trust you are seeing the devastating evolution of doubt and disobedience in our minds. First and foremost, all the diagrams the Spirit has guided me to create do giftedly tell the tale and at the level of detail that should make it uncomplicated to understand. Not only this, but Shaul sums up everything I have captured in these diagrams in Romans 7. He speaks expressly to the battles we fight with disobedience and doubt in our minds. And I have worked very hard to provide illustrations that show you what is happening and how it is happening. Heretofore, I advise you to always remember how the evolution of disobedience and doubt is a process. And the only way to avoid the strongholds and death at the conclusion of the process is to break the process. Trust me, this highway is a dead end, the key word being dead. Therefore, in all thy ways, acknowledge him, and by his Spirit be forever led. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on the word you have heard today. And as always, ask the Father to reveal the truth to you. For the children of Elohim live by conviction. And if he has not convicted you, or if you had not heard him concerning these matters, you should pray until you do. Today, I want you to consider all the plans you have made for your life. Now, consider the vision Yahuwah has revealed to you, to wit, his will for your life. And now, ask yourself the following question. Are my plans aligned with his vision? You'll know if they do because your plans will reflect the 3 degrees of faith. To wit, they will be aligned with the precepts of hope, trust, and reliance. And thus, if any of your plans fail to pass The faith test. You, my friend, need to amend your plans. And you will need to make some upgrades to your faith and your prayer life. And should you need help, you know what to do. Find a spiritual leader and let him or her help you. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, End Times 366, How Disobedience Plagues the Mind, Part 3. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 367, How Disobedience Plagues the Mind, Part 4. I will post this podcast on November 6th, 2024. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim. Continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.